Since the invention of the printing press, individuals have been creating content and materials to inform, delight, and even deceive people. From its inception, media and news has been a tool that has brought about the rise and fall of nations. One of the best examples of this is certainly Nazi Germany, with what we had seen with propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. But the idea of weaponizing media is far older than that. Now, forgive me for making another Voltaire quote, but I'm going to deliver it to you anyway. Anyone who can make you believe in absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Now, this was back in 1765, as my sources were able to determine. And man, does the shoe fit. Since March of 2020, we have certainly seen media used to target people, hurt minority groups, and discredit people who have excellent credentials. Since the 2021 federal Canadian election, our political leaders, especially Justin Trudeau, have been working overtime to use his platform to shame a certain group that does not wish to cooperate with what I will call his fear-mongering recommendations. Banning a minority group of people from every government workplace, from planes, trains, and ostracizing them on a national television show by calling them misogynistic, anti-science, and racist. The media has taken hold of this fanatically and have not only run with it, but have sprinted with it. If the pen is mightier than the sword, that would mean digital media is far more superior to a standing, well-equipped military. Now, I need some help unpacking this big subject, and for that I have a very special returning guest, Rick Walker, who has decades of experience in working in news, media, and has something to say about responsible news and media and what it should be. So, without further ado, welcome to the Flow of Discourse. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Flow of Discourse. I am, as always, your host, Brandon Kennedy. So, for today's show, we do have, once again, a very special guest, Rick Walker. And as always, please remember to like and subscribe if you like what we do here at the Flow of Discourse. It is greatly appreciated. We're available on Facebook and Twitter, and if you have an idea for a show or if you wish to be a part of it, please feel free to email me at theflowofdiscourse@gmail.com. Now, without further ado, I bring you Rick Walker. Hello, Rick Walker. How are you?
I'm just fine. How are you, Brendan?
Oh, not too bad. I'm really glad that you decided to come on the show. I know you have decades of experience with the topic at hand here, so I don't think that there's anybody more qualified I could bring on to talk about this. Now, I know you've been on the show before for people who listen, but for those who have not, if you could please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I worked for CTV News and Chum Broadcasting for over 25 years as a reporter, videographer. I've worked in media in one respect or another all my life, even since I was a kid making Super 8mm movies when I was like 9 years old. And even today, I have a television show about cars, which I produce independently, called the SST Car Show. It runs on Scripps broadcasting stations in the United States. It beams back into Canada on satellite and cable systems. And that show, in various forms, used to run in Canada on the old A channel network and through CTV. So yeah, I've worked in media for a long time. I'd say the majority of the time working in the news business, and now and for the past 15 years or so as an independent producer as well.
That's absolutely incredible. So you have a lot of experience to draw on. And what about schooling? Where did you get your education from?
I studied at the University of Western Ontario, where I studied some economics, and I also graduated from Fanshawe College and their broadcast journalism program.
So you have, you would have, I guess, compared to what a lot of news representatives would have now, a more old school approach to things.
I would say so. I definitely come from the school of journalism that where you were taught to not inject your opinion if you're a reporter or a journalist. It was my job really to facilitate or to provide a platform for all points of view, condense the information in a way that the public could digest it and then make their own decisions and draw their own conclusions based on all those perspectives, and to try to be as unbiased as possible.
That kind of was going to roll into my next question here. So, which is, you could tie this in with what you just said, but we have talked about it before too, but about journalistic integrity. So what is journalism supposed to be, and what is its function in a democracy?
Those are heavy duty questions. What is journalism supposed to be? Journalism comes in many forms. And what is it supposed to be? Well, I don't know that there are any hard and fast rules written about it, but I think in its best form, in a form that serves the public best, it is exactly as I described. It's where you have reporters who are trying to be impartial and to facilitate a discussion and explore ideas. That's the best form of journalism, because it just isn't tainted as much. Everyone brings their a worldview to everything they do. Everyone has their own biases. But I think journalism in its purest form is practiced in a way where you try to extract yourself from that and not let yourself be influenced by your own prejudices. But I mean, it comes in many forms. Books, movies are a form of journalism. What we're doing right now is a form of journalism. Uh, and outright propaganda, advertising could be argued to be a form of journalism. It comes in many forms.
We're definitely biased here on this podcast. Like I'm definitely right leaning, conservative or libertarian. But I mean, I would prescribe myself to have, like, there's some ideas that I have that are liberal, like freedom of speech is a liberal based trait. It's more than conservatism, I would say, especially during the 2000s, where there was a big push to ban a lot of different things that kind of came from the political right side, but in a little bit of way, it is a part of a liberal democracy, you could say, free speech. I guess that's where my standpoint is on things. I believe in heavily personal responsibility, and that's a big thing. You had talked about an injection of opinions in news. Is that something that, for somebody who has created this content for a long time, do you see that more now than you did before?
No, yes. Yeah, I think it's in everything anymore. I the journalism, the news that we're getting today is nothing even close to what it was when I was working as a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
It's in everything, and it's there for a variety of reasons, in my estimation. And I'm saddened to see it. And I'm honestly glad that I'm not working as a reporter today because of it.
What would you say would be the biggest things, that if you could pick out one or two things that you see injected into most things from, say, let's say CBC or CTV, that sort of thing?
It's subtle. To the average person, I don't think the average person recognizes it or realizes it. My parents are elderly. My father's 90 years old. When I speak to him, it's quite apparent to me that he doesn't realize that he's being manipulated by media, because he, through his life, as I have through most of my life, been exposed to media that was closer to being impartial. But when but it's the language that is chosen. It's the skillful writing and the choice of words and phrases and what is omitted in information that creates this biased sort of media environment. It's a style of journalism. It's where they dismiss one side altogether by saying something like, so and so politician made such and such a statement without any evidence, just saying that out of hand.
Yeah.
Or more and more going to something like, sources say, according to sources, without actually identifying who they are, who those sources are. So
Now,
it's a subtle thing. It's just the way they write it. And when I watch it, because I'm trained in media, I'm well aware of it, and I want to throw things at the television screen when I see it.
I'm not trained in media, but I want to do the same thing sometimes. Picking out one thing that you said there that really resonates with me is that when they omit things, like something is totally missing from the articles, I catch that like all the time. Or what we had really seen since March of 2020 with our current pandemic is oftentimes they'll say, oh, there was a big protest and the police just sat there and didn't do anything. And then at the end of the article, they always make sure they insert, oh, by the way, nobody was wearing a mask. So it's almost like a condemnation.
Yes.
They don't want to get into why people are upset or disgruntled. And I think that is at the detriment to society, in all honesty, because they're just saying, look at all these weirdos, they're out there to hurt you.
Well, there's definitely cheerleading going on in that respect, and when they choose to, I guess, identify particular behaviors or a particular element of a story, like, and they didn't wear any masks, they're promoting a particular political point of view, because masks have become very politicized, and they're promoting that. So, yeah, I mean, and you're quite right. It's the information that they choose to not share with you that is maybe even more dangerous than the information that they do choose to share with you in their stories. And I can tell you that through the years, sitting in editorial meetings in the mornings, where it was decided what stories would be covered during the day and what stories wouldn't, it was often the stories that were omitted or ignored that sort of shaped the narrative for the news cycle, right? So, yeah, it's not just what they're telling you; it's what they're not telling you or not sharing with you.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing to always keep like your eye out for. Um,
Well, and you don't know, because you
no.
don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, if there was a new, I don't know, chemical on the market, right? And they said it cleans great, but then they didn't tell you that it, gives you brain cancer, because they just decided to just leave that part out because they had some contract with an advertising company. The chemical company was giving them X number of dollars. Oh, well, we'll just leave the brain cancer part out. Well, yeah, you don't know.
That really resonates with our current situation and the cure that everybody's being offered. That it's like we see athletes who are dropping down with usually cardiac arrest incidents and stuff like that. Rick Nichols, for the member for provincial parliament for Chatham-Kent-Leamington brought this to the attention of Parliament and received all crickets. But the point I'm trying to make is that the news just watches it and they go, gee, I wonder why that happens. Well, in other news,
it's interesting to note that the federal government in Canada spent, I believe it was last year, $88 million to promote the COVID-19 vaccinations. So where does that money get spent? Who receives that $88 million? Radio stations, television stations, newspapers, even some online media properties. Does that influence what is said in the media? I'll leave that on the table.
That's on top of all the other subsidies that they're getting, and a lot of the media that they are pushing out is not expensive media to make. Like, I made a second-rate thumbnail for our podcast here today, and a lot of these things are just like a stock photo image of a person with the Ontario logo on it, and like, all this stuff is cheap to make, especially if you already have all the equipment to do it and you're just contracted out to make this stuff day in and day out.
Cheap in the sense that the tools are accessible, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they're paying for the reach. They're paying for the credibility in the eyes of the public that comes with having their message delivered by an established media platform like CTV or the CBC or
Google.
Global or Google or Facebook, yes, where it's approved by fact checkers.
Yeah, we makes you shake your head. Makes me shake my head. That kind of goes into what my next question is here. Now, I kind of have...
And yet, just ironically, though, isn't it interesting that public trust in media seems to be at an all-time low, even though they're spending these record amounts of money? Anyway, sorry, go ahead with your next question.
No, that's an excellent point. I think I seen a survey coming out of the UK that a YouTuber put out there. I think it was like 10% of the population surveyed believed in the media. Like, that's all-time low. Just like we've been doubling down on everything else in what we're doing, even if it works or doesn't work. I kind of wanted to ask you this because I wanted your take. Like, I have my take on it, but your take, what would your take be on the implications of the government paying $61 million to secret list of media outlets before an election? What type of implications would this have on a society?
Have you been to the grocery store this week?
Yeah.
Did you check the meat aisle?
It's more or less I call it the Soviet shopping simulator.
Yeah. So what are the impacts on society? Well, this is what we voted for, I guess. If the government is injecting cash into media outlets, especially right before an election, it's like, if you go to a news conference for a company or a politician or whatever, or even, I do a lot of automotive journalism. So if a car company has what they'll do is they will invite automotive journalists to an event, give them access to a vehicle, fair enough, right?
Yeah.
But then they'll feed them lunch, and then, or they'll, I've been on a junket where, and I haven't been on one since, but, they take you away for a weekend, put you up in a hotel, feed you the finest food, and take you on these excursions where you get to drive these cool cars. And do you think that influences what you say about the car?
Yeah, absolutely it does.
If they're giving these media outlets just grants, like, here's $10 million. Even if you're not like directly changing what you say because you're like, oh no, I'm only going to say nice things about Justin Trudeau. It even in the back of your mind, like even if you're a journalist and you know that your company is getting 10 million and your job is maybe not stable to begin with because the media business is unstable. Maybe you're thinking twice. Like you're sitting back saying, well, at least the liberals are supporting Canadian culture or Canadian journalism. So it shapes your view. It absolutely does. I think it's quite dangerous.
Yeah, I was really saddened to hear today that the CBC has been. They came out with this whole new deal where they're going to try to be relieved of advertising dollars and go more or less straight onto the government. So the government is planning on spending uh, over 400 million over the next few years on relieving them of advertising dollars entirely. So I don't know if that's going to go straight to their online platform or that type of thing, but um, I think if that is the case, you might as well have some kind of communist state broadcaster. Like that's what's the
What do you mean?
difference at
Might
that
as
point?
well have. Don't we have that now? That's
We
what they
do,
are. They
we do.
are. That is what they are. If
Mm-hmm.
you're watching the CBC, I'm sorry, folks, but you are watching propaganda. That's the bottom line. They're a mouthpiece for the government, and every once in a while they will, inject some criticism of a particular politician or this or that, but they're really there promoting a government agenda. Make no mistake about it, and it is very left wing. That's the
Mm-hmm.
bottom line, and there's just no getting around it. It's very progressive, right? I don't like that term because it sounds so positive and yet it's so sinister at the same time and destructive.
Yeah.
But it's not what it was supposed to be.
No. No. It's oddly enough, I always found it weird that the Ontario Conservative Party is called the Progressive Conservatives.
Mm.
What the hell? Or wait, that's the federal. What the hell
Yeah.
does that mean? Progressive Conservative.
Well,
We are.
it's because the party evolved and it has become, it was it's combines the progressive element, which was sort of like the Red Tories, like the Joe Clark types from the 70s,
Yeah.
with the traditional conservatives, and they came together and found some common ground to create this progressive conservative party, and that's what we have today. And a leader like Aaron O'Toole and Stephen Harper came more from the conservative side. So you've got these two elements within that party, and that's exactly what the party is. But today it's more progressive than it is conservative.
Yeah. Yeah. That's big time. And I'd say the population of Canada knows it too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely. But I think that the party has just gotten to a point where O'Toole feels like he can't win if he doesn't appeal more to the progressive side, and he's trying to win over those liberals and the undecideds in order to get enough votes to win. But what he doesn't realize is that Stephen Harper probably had it right when he stopped trying to appeal so much to the progressive side and focused more on his conservative base. And that's what got him elected and reelected.
Yeah. I was thinking hard about some of the things that we could talk about that would show people the power of the media. And you told a story one time, and it really resonated with me. And I have a bit of a point that I want to make with it. You have told me before you had covered the Y2K in the year 2000 or 1999.
Yes.
I think that there's some valuable lessons out of that story. Would you be able to share that with us?
So it was 1999. We were partying like it was 1999. And I was a reporter for CTV, and I was told that I had to do a series on Y2K because there were all these concerns that at the stroke of midnight in the year 2000, computers, which were only designed to go up to 1999 on the dates, wouldn't flip over properly to 2000, and computer systems around the world would malfunction and planes would fall from the sky and nuclear power plants would explode and there would be chaos everywhere. So it was, and there were so many stories going on about that back then. It was just over the top hype, 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 hype. And I was really uncomfortable with it. And I told the news director I didn't really want to do the series because I felt that it was exactly that. It was a lot of hype, but I'm just the reporter. So I was assigned to do it. I had to do it. So I went out and I did it. I did the interviews. I did present both sides of the story. But of course, just by doing it, you're fueling the fear, right?
Yeah.
So that series ran over the holidays, Christmas holidays that year. And of course it ran, and then New Year's Eve came and the planes did not fall from the sky and the nuclear power plants did not blow up. And then I was accused of sensationalizing things after the fact. So I said I didn't want to do it to begin with. And I tried to be fair and balanced in the report, and I think I generally was, but
Okay.
just by doing it, you were buying into the narrative, right?
Hmm.
And adding fuel to that, to those flames that were really just making people fearful.
Who said you who said that you over sensualized the story? If I
Some
could.
people after New Year's Eve, when everything didn't blow up, people complained, called the station to complain about the series, and then the news director who assigned me the story called me into his office to reprimand me. I said
Whoa.
I didn't want to do it to begin with.
Now, I wish something like that would happen in regards to this whole mess that we're in now. The science table making inaccurate numbers on a whole bunch of things. Um, we have been fed the fear porn that is not the same type of fear porn, but I would say is very close to that story. Um, I remember
Worse, far
1999.
worse. It's far
Yeah,
worse.
I remember 1999, and people were afraid of that. But
Mhm.
at least you knew, like, okay, it'll be 1999, and it'll be 2000, and then something bad might happen. But with this, it's like there's an invisible enemy everywhere, and you should be absolutely terrified. Um, so this was your news station that directed you to go out and make this story. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have to say, I mean, I tried to be balanced, to be unbiased, to present both sides of the story, and there was, an alternative perspective offered in that 5-part series.
Yeah.
But that's not what people were hearing. They weren't hearing the balance. They were just getting the fear.
Now, if that type of thing scared the crap out of people in 2000, what type of results could be possible with the Canadian military using the pandemic as an opportunity to test propaganda on Canadians? This also happened in the UK as well, probably in the United States. I can't confirm that, but birds of a feather flock together, so I, I can only imagine. I don't think we know the depth of how much the Canadian military was involved in that because they did say, oh, we stopped it after a month, but then they found that they had continued operations and doing stuff like that. Um, what type of games would they be playing with us if that's the thing? And this is all speculation, of course, because nobody knows like the deaths, and we'll never know.
Well, I think we're in a very dangerous place right now. I mean, what is propaganda? It is an attempt to provide information in a way that manipulates people, right? To get them to take a particular kind of action, to make them respond in a particular way. So it's everything is a form of propaganda, but what we're really talking about here is something that's very directed. And the place we're in right now is, I think, very dark and very dangerous, because you can see elements in this. You might call it, this $88 million advertising or information campaign to
Yep.
promote vaccinations. Is that propaganda or is it information? I suppose it depends on your perspective. If you believe that what they're doing is the right thing, then that's an information campaign. And if you think that it's the only way out of the pandemic, then you believe that it's right maybe to suppress other points of view, which are dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Because, you might convince someone to not get the vaccination and they could die. Okay, maybe. Or maybe the government is spending $88 million and the message is being skewed and the perspective is skewed. Maybe that's a form of propaganda. Maybe that's your perspective.
Hmm.
So, which is it? When the government's spending 88 million, which is a record amount of money, I think that's more than they spent in total on advertising at the federal level in total. I think normally they spend about $50 million a year on advertising, and last year they spent just 88 million on COVID promotion, and that's what it is. It's promotion,
Yeah.
and that's just the feds. That's not provincial governments. You turn so I mean, what's my perspective on that? It's worse than that, because it's not what you're getting now through the media and from the politicians has been the demonization and dehumanization of a certain group of people, which is the unvaccinated, and slogans like it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated, as though someone who hasn't been vaccinated but isn't infected is in some way putting the health of other people at risk, when we know that people who have been vaccinated can still be infected, can still spread it, can still get sick, can still end up in a hospital, can still die from it. But it's this particular group of people, and we've seen it in through history, whether it's Hitler dehumanizing Jewish people and gay people and calling them vermin, and
Yeah.
then that leading to the extermination of millions and millions of people, or whether it was Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge and the killing fields and his communist government demonizing and dehumanizing intellectuals or anyone who wore glasses, because he wanted an agrarian utopia and his own sort of great reset, and ended up killing about 2 million people. Like, and that was not that long ago. That was in the 1990s, right? So,
Yeah.
so
No.
like,
Well, I guess another one would be the situation in Rwanda. That was another
sure,
big
that
one.
that was Rwanda, 1990, mid 1990s, around 1994,
Yeah.
and the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. That was like mid 1970s, around 1974, 75. Um, it's really disgusting, and so that, I'm sorry, but that is what I see right now with what the media is doing with a particular group of people, and they're so demonizing and dehumanizing people in this particular group of the unvaccinated that somehow it has become okay to take away their job,
Hmm.
to prohibit them from going into a place of business. It's a form of medical bigotry, is what it is. And it's bloody disgusting. And I'm appalled and ashamed to be a Canadian at this time because of what I see going on. It's absolutely, completely nauseating. It's disgusting. And it has to stop.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, Brendan, you and I both know where that can lead. And you hear people talking about this. These people should be taken away and placed in camps or in quarantine facilities.
Yeah. Arrested, taxed, fined,
Right.
and that's how it all starts.
You know what? Take all that and stick it, because that is just outright bigotry and brainwashing. That is the result of government propaganda. And the sooner we get rid of this damn government promoting this kind of hatred, the better.
I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know what the solution out of this is. I do know that they are playing with fire. We've seen the Toronto Star, the CBC. There is a number of other journalist agencies that are over highlighting opinion pieces sent in by people, and they're all saying, well, people who don't get vaccinated need to go and get put away, or something bad happened to them. I was really appalled by the CBC. Sometimes I'll turn on CBC radio to kind of check out what the vibe is there. And I'm sure you've heard of the radio show Cross Country Checkup, where it's a call-in show. So they'll say, oh, call in and give us your opinion on this, that, and the other thing. The show is entirely screened, so you call in, you speak with a producer, and the producer will determine if you get to talk or not. It won't matter if you're the first or the 10th person in the queue. What they'll do is keep you on hold for the whole time and not put you on the air if you say something they don't like. But they had this one guy on there, and he was like, well, I was in the army one time, and when I was in the army, they gave you a bunch of vaccines, and you didn't question anything, and you didn't say anything. All these people are crackpots, and they should all be locked up and thrown away. They gave this guy a megaphone on a national broadcaster radio station that airs all over the world, and they let him say that on TV. One of the more heartbreaking things I'd seen was there was a news report, and it was saying, oh, well, Austria is doing this with their unvaccinated people, and then they would say other countries, and then they had the nerve to say the Philippines are going to start throwing these people in jail. Canada does not need to take lessons from the Philippines ever. This is a country that takes people who they suspect of drug dealing and they shoot them in the street. We are not in a position to look for the Philippines for anything. Like, I'm sure you remember that garbage incident where they received a shipping container of quote-unquote recycling, but it was all garbage. And the president of the Philippines was like, we're going to war with Canada. You bet your ass we took the garbage back. It was a big international incident.
Oh, I remember. Yep.
But at no time should we ever compare any Western nation to the Philippines and any of the policies that they have. Like, I'm sure it's an okay country and stuff, but we're two different places on two different scales.
Are we? Are we?
Not anymore, but
I'm not so sure anymore, Brendan. I wake up for the last just 2.5 years. I go to bed and I think it can't get any worse, and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, it's worse.
Now, I'm wondering, and I don't know how much we can speculate on this, because I'm not the brightest light bulb on any Christmas tree by any means, but I'm sure you've heard of by now mass formation psychosis, and we know that the governments have had these propaganda programs. The proof is in the pudding with what you said and the $88 million. If that all is true, that we are going through a mass formation psychosis, then these governments are directly responsible for it.
Yes.
And they know.
Yes.
And they know. They know they are.
Yes, they know.
That's appalling. Like, I don't know the way out of this stuff either.
Eventually, truth, and I think that things get to a certain point where it's so bad and so horrific that people come to realize. But the trouble with that is that by the time you get to that point, you're so deep in that, and the government has such a stranglehold and such control over people in various ways, systemically, that people don't know how to respond and get out of it. I think we're in that situation right now. You take a medical officer of health, right?
Yeah.
Is he allowed to dissent? No. Does he want to keep his job? Yes. If he does dissent, he'll be fired. You take a chamber of commerce. Their goal is to keep businesses open. So if they're told that if you subscribe to our point of view on lockdowns and forced vaccinations and vaccination mandates, and you agree to promote the firing of people who don't take a vaccination, then that's our way out of this. That's the only way that we can allow you to reopen these businesses. And you all have to have everybody wear masks and do all these different things. And if you subscribe to this, that will be the way to reopen the businesses. So these chambers will say, okay, that's the way to keep the businesses open. That's our mandate. We'll support that. But if they dissent from that, then these chambers, particular business districts, municipalities, they don't get government money. They don't get grants. They don't get subsidies for their businesses, for their local infrastructure projects. It goes on and on. So they become sort of controlled in that way, right? Through the distribution of funds, money, programs. You're either, if you don't support this, you're out. If you do support it, you're in. Car companies, even large corporations of all kinds. If you back up the government line, you get government grants to build a new factory. If you don't, you get nothing, and your competitors kick your butt, and you're out of business. So you better fall in line, or you don't get any of the gravy.
You get nothing.
You get nothing.
It's I did see kind of some interesting news that there is going to be essentially all the lawsuits that have been piling up that people have been putting out there for the past 2 years are starting to go to court like now. Not that I have too much hope with it, because the courts have been siding with the government at just about every turn except for the United States, but Canada is not the United States and is not following suit. So it should be interesting to see what will happen from that standpoint. So that'll be to come in the next little bit. But you're absolutely right. People need to speak the truth.
Well, I just to come back just briefly to where all this can lead. Mm-hmm. If you think that the atrocities that we saw from the Nazis or from Stalin, when he starved people to death by the millions because they were his political opponents or were opposed to his policies, or any of these communist thugs around the world who have murdered millions of people, if you think we're far away from that, give your head a shake, because when we're at the point where we're dehumanizing an entire group of people, targeting Christians, targeting church people, targeting people who choose not to get vaccinated, demonizing them, we're not far away from having people hauled away to camps. And we've done it before in World War II with Japanese citizens, right?
Italians as well.
Yep, it can happen here.
Irish before that.
So, all my progressive friends out there, open your eyes, because this has really mostly been fueled by progressivism. And I think an arrogance that they know best.
Now,
government knows best, right?
Yeah.
So just follow our leader.
In the intro I wrote for the show, I touched on, Justin Trudeau. Basically, he said all these horrible things about people, and the media, not only did they run with it, they ran with it. They sprinted with it.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop. They still haven't stopped.
Oh yeah, so so if you don't get vaccinated, you're a misogynist, a racist,
And meanwhile,
what the hell? What the hell is that? That is simply demonizing people.
not only that, it's a straight up lie.
It's absolutely a lie.
They found that the quote unquote average not vaccinated person in August of 2021, as per Maclean's magazine, was like 40-something-year-old women who vote Liberal in Toronto.
The truth is, the truth is the government's just looking for a scapegoat because their policies have failed. We have record number of COVID infections across the country today. We have just as much or more death now as we did a year ago on a daily basis. You can look it up on Worldometer. And they're looking for a scapegoat. And anyone who hasn't been vaccinated is the scapegoat. And be careful, people, because the scapegoat is your next door neighbor.
And we certainly have seen that. Neighbor pitted against neighbor.
Yep.
COVID reporting emails, phone numbers.
And
if you know any suspicious activity, please report it. And
it's appalling.
Well, through the 80s and 90s, we had the war on drugs, and then the war on terror. And since the war on terror, like you're seeing this in the United States, and in Canada, where the RCMP recently came out and made statements to report anti-government behavior. And Joe Biden, you may have seen him making some talking points, but we need to protect the country against enemies foreign, and he goes, and yes, domestic. The
domestic terrorism.
The new thing is the government is waging war on its citizens. And that's what's happening right now.
And it's happening in Canada as well, in a way that is not really being effectively reported. But you're seeing it in hate speech legislation. These pieces of legislation are really designed to give government tools to go after their political opponents. If you think it's about hate speech, think again. It's a tool for the government to use against people that go against their grain.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And here's some common sense for people. Canada already has laws that protect you, the individual. It's illegal to assault somebody. It's illegal to harass somebody. Mm-hmm. It's illegal to... And these are great things. I believe in that. I would not harass or assault somebody. And I would hope somebody would not do the same thing to me.
That's right.
I mean...
But these hate speech laws are so written in such a way that there's a wide way, many ways to interpret them. It's interpret the way the laws are written. And so if someone says something in a particular way and the government doesn't like it, you can target that person. If they're your political opponent, right?
And then you're rotting away in jail waiting for your court date, which is God knows when.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even about getting a conviction. They're just using lawfare to target and bankrupt their political opponents, right? We've seen a lot of that, especially in the U.S., where in the end, the person may be found innocent, but it's getting to the end of the legal process that's very expensive and can consume someone's life and destroy someone's life. It's the process. It's a terrible thing. Anyway, that's a little bit off the propaganda beat, but it is happening.
It's all tied in because a lot of that stuff is examples of how they have turned the media on people. Like after 9/11, everybody was all together. We're all in this together. We have a war on terror. We have to go get these guys. We have to. We stand with the United States and blah 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 and that sort of thing. And really, all it really does for me at this point is it brings me to the attention of. It brings the attention to me of these things don't matter to me. These are not my family. These aren't the things that bring me together with everyday life. Like those are the things that matter to everybody. Is what's around you. Who do you see when you wake up in the morning, and who do you come home to every night? Those are the things that matter. And all the stuff that they try and get you to care about, most of it doesn't matter in your day-to-day life. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You need not get all bent out of shape about it. But that's the thing, though, right? Whenever they are going to try to pull an emotional response out of you, that's when you have to watch out. That's when you know something's cooking. They want you to care about something.
That's exactly right. And that is how the most effective propaganda works. They use emotion, not facts. So when you're watching television or listening to the radio, or if you're online, you need to be aware that you are being manipulated, that your emotions are being played with. And that is also something that sort of sets apart, I would say, a more pure form of journalism from propaganda. It became very clear to me early in my journalism career that I could make people cry by telling a story effectively, right? And that can be very helpful in some ways if you're trying to get people to donate to a charity or something, If you're watching a commercial for care and they're showing some starving children, it tugs at your heartstrings, right?
Yeah.
Government does the same thing, but through this whole COVID thing, it's been fear porn from the beginning. And the media using stock shots of caskets and grave sites and showing people in their moon suits walking around.
That's another thing they do, right? I like the stock shots. They have shots of just about everything.
Yeah.
I believe even with the global warming scheme, what was it that you had said about that? Like they,
Oh, glaciers, right?
yeah,
Icebergs. You see the iceberg floating in the sea, and then a big chunk of ice falls off because it's melting. Well, in the news, if you're watching that on television and they're telling you that you've got global warming, oh my God, look at the iceberg melting. So visually, it reinforces for the average person that the Arctic is melting.
yeah.
But those icebergs break off and they float down into warmer water every year, and they have stock shots of that stuff. So it's not like the videographer was there at that day necessarily. Sometimes those are quite often it's just a piece of file video that they pulled and injected into the story, and it maybe didn't happen today, and it might not even have happened at the North Pole. It probably happened somewhere closer to Newfoundland because the thing had floated down into warmer water. But so they
It's a manipulation. It's a manipulation tactic, is what it is.
It is, and quite often, people don't know. I'm sure I'm not even aware of a lot that I'm exposed to, where it's exactly that, where images are used. We used, when I was in the business of news, we used stock images or file images all the time. But generally, when I used it, there was a super, like a text on the screen to tell people this is file footage. I don't see much of that today.
I can't say I've seen it ever. It's kind of funny because there's entire companies that are based off of having stock footage now. Mm-hmm. YouTubers use them all the time, where they'll show a man and a woman talking.
Standard practice when I was in the news business. You use file footage, you put a super up, you tell people it's file. You'd sometimes see file or file footage in the top left-hand corner of the screen. But today, I don't know. I don't see much of that.
Yeah.
But that's a subtle thing again, right? Choice of words, choice of images. Where did those pictures come from? What are you showing people?
Big time. Now, before we wrap this up here, so you touched a little bit on this. What would you say would be the Rick Walker's guide to reviewing and receiving news? What would you say to people out there to help them improve their skepticism?
First, most simple thing, question everything. Everything you see in media, what I'm telling you right now, question it. Don't just take what I'm saying as truth. Don't take anything you're seeing from CBC, CTV, from anything on Google or Facebook. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't just take it as gospel. Question it. Do your own research. Try to get more perspectives on things. My daughter has said, you shouldn't be watching that video or that guy because he's dangerous. No, watch it all. Watch everything. Fill your head full of everything you possibly can. Get all the perspectives. People are smart. And if you give people enough information, and if they are able to find it, all the information, they can quite often make good decisions for themselves. That is really it in a nutshell. Question everything. And always be skeptical when you're seeing people inject descriptive terms and emotion, and when they're dismissing in a story another perspective as not being valid. This, just ignore that person because what they're saying is crazy. They're all crazy people. No, just I think it's good to listen to all perspectives. And if someone is crazy, it will be quite apparent because good arguments will defeat bad arguments.
That is one of the trending topics of this show, believe it or not. We always talk about good ideas will always beat bad ideas, and bad ideas always need to be made fun of.
Well,
plain and simple.
Exposed, how do you expose a bad idea if you can't explore all perspectives, right?
Yeah. Now, I know you have a lot of things going on. If you would like to take an opportunity, where can people find you? And you have a lot of automotive journalism and material that I like to watch. Other people, if you're a car person, Rick Walker will tell you where he can be found.
You can find my automotive journalism, which is far less political, at sstcarshow.com. And we also have a virtual auto show, which is rolling out as part of the Ottawa-Gatineau International Auto Show, which for the third year in a row is not happening this year because of COVID restrictions imposed by government. But we do have a virtual auto show through something we call the Autos 360 Network. But you'll find it at ottawaautoshow.com. And you can also get to the virtual auto show through autoshowottawa.com. So two different URLs, but sstcarshow.com, ottawaautoshow.com, and autoshowottawa.com. So that's where you'll find, a lot of my work. And I'm on social media, YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it if people would subscribe to the YouTube channel, SST Car Show. We have a bunch of YouTube channels, and we get more views on some than others. We're also on alternative platforms too, because I like to support free speech. So we're on like BitChute, Odyssey, Dailymotion, platforms like that, and Facebook, of course. And we'll be joining some others in the next couple of weeks as well.
Perfect. Well, I'll be sure to put your main ones in the description down below of this video. So do take a look there if you enjoy automotive reviews and automotive industry related content. So definitely some cool things that you have going on there. Keep it up. I really enjoy it. And certainly thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brendan. It was a privilege as always, and really appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts and have a discussion with you because it's always enlightening.
You as well, sir. Thank you so much. Now, for the rest of everybody, I do appreciate you listening in to the Flow of Discourse podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back at you with more content in the next week. Stay safe out there.